G'day and welcome to a bit of a chat today. The doors are closed so the crows won't be so loud. Today we're talking about consistency and gig preparation. There is nothing worse than, and I had it for years, turning up to a gig. Am I going to be ready? Am I going to be able to play the gig? Am I going to be able to play at my best to get the gig done? Let me just say that having the expectation, the false expectation generally of, can I play at my best in order to get through the gig, like a personal best, good luck, you know. So as they say in Zen in the Art of Archery, there's a premonition of failure. Am I going to you get this trepidation, can I get through the gig? Am I going to be right for the gig? And the other one, of course, is relying on favourable conditions. So I'm going to talk about how to go about developing consistency and preparing for gigs so that no matter what the conditions are, you are able to execute the gig to the standard that you would be expected to do. And it doesn't matter whether it's your first recital and you might be 10 years old playing Brahms' Lullaby or something, or playing in a couple of the gigs that I'll talk about. So consistency. If you wake up in the morning, are you worried about your voice working? It's pretty much going to work every day unless you've got a cold or you've had a lemonade or too many the night before. Your voice is pretty much going to be okay. So why is it that we've got so much uncertainty about our instrument? It's an awareness, and this is what the Windworks course is all about. Closed eyes, internalization, awareness of your ability, awareness of your processes, so then you can really easily detect if you're using any overexertion to get the result that is required. And ideally we would be playing at an optimum efficiency all the time, regardless of the amount of material. And in fact, it just comes to my mind now, a great friend of mine, Shane Gillard in Melbourne, an amazing player, said you should talk about, and this is quite a few years ago after we'd done 2 days of recording a huge album, you should talk about your efficiency. How can you just keep playing? But because I can do it, I don't really notice it. So if I don't notice it, I don't talk about it. But he goes, you can keep playing. And I guess what it is the efficiency that I'm working on developing with you, because you're not overexerting. It's endurance is based on, I'm getting off topic, but it's based on playing easily. But it's an awareness of overexertion. And I mean, as you'll see, I link playing with humming and singing, and there's a real great reason to do that. But we want to be convinced that our chops, our ability is reliable for the gig, as long as you're not trying to kid yourself and the music's beyond what you're capable of. And I've got 3 zones. You've got your green zone, which is what you can do every day. Can you pick up and play that low C? Great process, great sound, great feeling. Low B flat on your trombone or something. Is it there every day? Or do some days feel worse than others and sound better than others? And some days it takes longer to warm up, which I'm going to talk about. So then you've got the green zone. Yes, I can do this no matter what. On every single day, I know that I can play that sound, that technique, that speed, that range. Then you've got the yellow zone, which is kind of, I can play it most of the time, but it's not always consistent. And then there's the red zone, where it's something that you can do once and on a rainy day, and then you can't recreate it, and the harder you try to do it, the further you get away from it. So again, I've mentioned Zen in the Art of Archery. Just read it. It's all about expectation and pressure on yourself and everything. So in order to be consistent, you need an awareness of what you're capable of and where your zones are. And be realistic about it. Be very conservative with it. Don't be, let's leave the ego at the door. Let's leave our understanding of what we're capable of. Let's be really realistic about it. And you develop that in the practice room. And so the Windworks course goes through. Can you do this? Can you do this? Do you own this? Do you own this? Are you consistent with this note? Are you consistent with this tempo, with this volume, with this technique and flexibility through the range and articulations? Can you do it every day in the practice room? Or where does that green zone start to creep into yellow zone? Oh, I can do it most days, but some days I miss it, and some days it's really hard work, and some days the sound is not so good. And then the red zone is when you're playing at 120% and almost killing yourself and giving yourself hernias, that you might be able to squeeze out a note that you've never played before and you get really excited about it. That's not the best way to go. But I know plenty of people live like it. So to tie this in, it comes to the feeling of, what does it feel like to play? What does it feel like to play efficiently? What does it feel like to play at your best level? Where does that great feeling of, turn into, can I get through? Everything's tight and you're praying for the best outcome. Where does that happen? You never want to be relying on that for a gig. And two examples that I'd like to share with you. One's about preparation. Well, they're both about preparation, but in different ways. The first one, I was playing with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, which is always a thrill, and we were playing the score, live film score to the West Side Story. So the film's playing and the orchestra's playing live. And if you know that book, you know that the lead trumpet part is insane. So get through the gig, great. Lots of preparation, lots of work, and get it down. It's a tricky book rhythmically and in every way. Bernstein, what a legend, amazing. Anyway, so we get through that, and then what happens the next day? We've got a matinee at 3 o'clock. And I get up and, right, I've got some work to do. And after the gig the night before, to warm down, I don't really think about it. I don't have a routine of a warm down. It depends on the day. It depends on the gig. Sometimes never a warm down, just walk away, go home. Other times when you feel like you're beat up, look after yourself. Shower, warm water on the muscles. Occasionally, and it wasn't on this case, occasionally if you're a pro player and you're playing heaps and heaps and heaps and you're just completely beat up, and do not get into a habit of this, and I'm not endorsing it at all, but I've done it a couple of times and it helped, but don't do it all the time, is take an anti-inflammatory tablet just to get the swelling down and blood circulating. But I don't endorse you doing that all the time. Please understand that. And ideally, we don't even get to the position where we have to do that. And even having said that, after the West Side Story, I didn't need to do that, but I just used natural processes to prepare for the next day. So 10 o'clock in the morning, I go to play, and it's awful. It's terrible, horrible, scratchy. I can feel that the muscles are beat up and they don't respond. Now, if you don't know about sympathetic oscillation, mouthpiece, lead pipe, if you've never done that before, you stop wasting time. Get on and check it out at the course. You've got to do it. There's no, if you want to make a difference to your playing and you're having problems, you just got to do this. It's a no-brainer, right? So we've got to get that sympathetic vibration at the lip. Sympathetic, not synthetic, not manipulated, artificial, tight, pinch, push. The more you pinch, the harder the body has to work to get the vibration happening. Not efficient, doesn't feel good, generally doesn't sound good. So I won't go on about it, it's all there. So I'm playing 10 o'clock and it's all bad. There is no response. There is no sound. Thankfully, Greg has learned over the years, put instrument down, don't panic. A lot of people will try and play through it, push through it, and you'll end up, you've got tired muscles. What would an athlete do? You're tired muscles, you're not going to work more. You're going to go and get massages and jump in cold water and, stimulate the recovery. So unless you have to play, take your time. So I put the instrument down. And half an hour later, came back. Let's just check in. What does it feel like? note sort of happened. There was a bit of response, but it was still as scratchy and unscented and horrible as hell. Put it down. Back at 11 o'clock. Aha! Starts to speak. Body's concert hall, open, resonating, and the purity of sound is there. On the low C. Start to add a D, start to add an E, still pretty average. So by the time you get to E and then F, you can tell that it's just not ready yet. So I'm happy, I'm cool with that. And as a side note, I generally, and this is just me, all of this is subjective. What works for you? You've got to find what works for you. That's why you've got to know yourself. Harks back to what I was saying about the practice room. How well do you know yourself? And I know myself that I can play. I don't want to play within 2 hours of a gig to be really at 100%. Now, of course, I can play all the way through, do the gig, whatever. But ideally, to feel good. Feel good. Now, you saw the first one of these chats was all about the feeling. To feel good, I take 2 hours off before a gig so I can play, routine, preparation. Always 2 hours. Then just before the gig, some harmonic slurs real quick and get out and play. So after, the 11 o'clock, I'm sort of there, but C, D, E, F, G, awful. Still, it's not ready. It's not ready. Go away, mow the lawns, do whatever. And come back half an hour later. All of a sudden, there it is, starts to speak. So up to the C to the G. That part of the range is everything. People go, the Largo stage, it only goes up to the G. All of your habits, all of your wiring, it's all taken care of by the end of, by this range, because what you learn in the low range is what you're going to take up to the higher registers. People just don't get that. The exercise only goes to a G, so I can already play a G. Yeah, right, okay, you can play a G, but what's the process behind it? Just it's self-assessment. People don't like doing it. It's challenging, threatening, conflicting to lay yourself out bare and go, right, what's really going on? That's the best advice I can give you. Be open. Third session, starts to come together. Cool. But not for very much. I played a few notes, put it down again. Came back at midday. Started to feel some centre, get some nice crisp core to the sound. Up to the middle C, some chromatics, a bit of tonguing. Not too much, lots of rests. I'm just trying to find it. I'm not trying to play a gig. I'm just trying to prepare, after a big show, how to prepare to do it again. So I take my time. Now, clearly, if this was a regular gig that you would do all the time, because some of you might be thinking, yeah, Greg, but I play heaps and I have to do it 8 times a week. That's fine. But when you're not doing it 8 days a week as a freelance player, and all of a sudden you've got to do this thing live, you're not in any kind of gig condition in that way. And I was playing heaps, but on and off, short gigs, long gigs, roving gigs, big band gigs, jazz gigs, commercial sessions, you name it. But you might be playing for 10 minutes, half an hour. It's just a different gig. So the preparation for each gig is different. And so, of course, the fallout from each gig is going to be different as well. So I did the West Side Story theatre gig, and you do it 8 times a week. No problem. And that's nowhere near as hard a book as the movie. But no problem. You match fit. Anyway, I digress. So by 12:30, it starts to happen. Some more extend up to the upper part of the register. Nothing extreme. It's the F sharp book. There's a lot of F sharps high up. So, but I'm not going to just sit there and try and play that. I'm going to work up. So eventually by 12:30, I'm starting to get flexibility up, and I maybe even just up to the G. Exactly, I don't remember, but I didn't push it. So by the G, and then I'd have a break and then come back. And all I know is by the end of the this preparation time, so don't forget, this is from 10 o'clock till 1 o'clock, 3 hours to get organised for it. Starting to do some stuff, low C to high C. Started to feel okay, not great, but okay. And then a couple of squeaks just to put the toe in the water up higher. Nothing too much. Then my 2 hours off, get to the concert hall and start to play, and few expanded harmonic slurs up to the range that I need to play on the gig. Nothing extreme. Well, it's extreme, but I'm not trying to push up to blooming ridiculously high notes. But the flexibility was there. It started to come. I'm like, yeah, just a couple of times, just touch it. There we go. Just get it up and down, up and down. It's feeling fine. There's no this, there's no push, there's no that, none of that. And I'm like, okay, I'm cool, let's go. And I got onto the gig and felt fantastic. And at that stage, it was still earlier in my career, there was relief. There was relief. So I learnt a lot from that. For me to have, after years of experiencing, playing gigs and freaking out, working too hard and not getting some good results sometimes, to actually get to that point where I go, okay, take your time. Don't panic. You know you can do it. You just got to prepare. You know yourself well enough. And I took my time, got through the gig, and it's like, there's a real lesson for me. So I hope that resonates with some of you. Played the best gig that I'd maybe ever played on that day. It felt awesome. So I was very... and for me, a lot of the stuff, because I'm focused on education and sharing, I've had so many ideas, so many moments on gigs where I'll recognise something and I'm excited about it for the teaching perspective. Not for the moment, oh, that felt great, or this happened, or that happened. I'm going to talk, actually, I'll talk about some of these in a later video. But the fact that my brain goes, oh, wow, you've been working on that, and it just happened and I didn't have to think about it. Again, I just said it, there's Zen in the art of archery. It happened. No conscious thought about the process whatsoever. Just your training. Roger Federer, trust your practice. The practice that I'd been doing just came into play. It's really cool when that happens.